First contact. Commander Zoll stood on the bridge of the Kelvarian exploration vessel Horizon Seeker. His four eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display of Vorsis 9. The planet rotated slowly before him, its surface a chaotic blend of churning storm systems, volcanic activity, and vast oceans that glowed with bioluminescent toxins. Confirm classification, Zoll ordered, his translucent fingers tapping against the command console. Science Officer Tellera consulted her readings. All scans verify. Commander. Vorsis 9 is a Class 15 Deathworld. Atmospheric toxicity levels exceed safety parameters by 340%. Surface temperature variations range from 70 below to 60 above in a single diurnal cycle. Gravity at 1.3 standard. Native fauna shows extreme predatory adaptations. Zell's secondary respiratory membranes fluttered in concern. And yet the long-range scanners detected artificial structures. Affirmative. Tellera replied, bringing up enhanced imagery. There appears to be a settlement in the northern hemisphere, nestled between two mountain ranges. Energy signatures indicate powered systems, artificial light, and defensive perimeters. Impossible, muttered Navigation Officer Krell. No known species would attempt colonization of a Class 15 world. The environmental factors alone would require constant life support. Any failure would mean immediate death. Zoll zoomed in on the settlement, focusing on the structures that somehow withstood the punishing environment. Prepare a communication channel. Sir, Tellera interjected, I'm detecting movement outside the settlement. Bipedal figures without environmental suits. The bridge fell silent. Zoll's four eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of profound disbelief among Kelvarians. Magnify, he ordered. The holographic display zoomed closer, revealing humanoid figures moving freely through an external agricultural zone. They wore simple clothing, some with minimal protective gear, but nothing approaching the fully enclosed exosuits that would be mandatory for Kelvarians in such an environment. Humans, Zoll breathed. They're humans. The Kelvarian crew exchanged glances. Humans were a relatively new arrival to the galactic community. They had emerged from their home system only 80 years ago, establishing modest colonies on terraformed worlds. They were regarded as curiosities, adaptable and innovative, but without the technological sophistication of elder species. How are they surviving? Krell asked. Their technological level shouldn't allow for this. Zoll stared at the display, watching as the humans continued their work, apparently untroubled by conditions that would kill a Kelvarian in minutes. Open a channel, he ordered. Moments later, a human face appeared on the main view screen. Female, with dark skin, close-cropped hair, and eyes that evaluated Zoll with immediate awareness. This is Commander Ria Santos of Vorsis Settlement. Identify yourself and state your purpose. Her tone was neither hostile nor welcoming, merely efficient. Zoll straightened, his translucent skin shimmering under the bridge lights. I am Commander Zoll of the Kelvarian exploratory fleet aboard the Horizon Seeker. We detected your settlement during our survey of this system. May I ask how long humans have had a presence on Vorsis 9? Santos' expression remained neutral. We established Vorsis settlement 27 Earth years ago. Is there a problem? 27 years. Before official contact between humans and the wider galactic community. Before Vorsis 9 had even been cataloged by Kelvarian astronomers. No problem, Zoll replied carefully. We are simply surprised. Vorsis 9 is classified as a Class 15 Deathworld. No Kelvarian could survive on its surface without extensive life support systems. A slight smile touched Santos' lips. One species' Deathworld is another's fixer-upper. If you'd like to see how we manage, you're welcome to send a delegation. Just be aware that we can't guarantee your safety without proper equipment. Zoll exchanged glances with his officers. Protocol suggested caution, but the opportunity to understand how humans had accomplished the impossible was too valuable to ignore. We accept your invitation, Commander Santos. We will prepare a shuttle with appropriate protective measures. We'll be waiting, Santos replied. "Transmitting landing coordinates now." The screen went dark, and Zal turned to his officers. "Prepare the environmental suits and a scientific team. Whatever humans have discovered about surviving on Vorsis 9, we need to understand it." 4 hours later, the Kelvirian shuttle descended through Vorsis 9's turbulent atmosphere. Even with advanced stabilizers, the craft bucked and shuddered as lightning storms, and powerful wind shears hammered against its hull. Inside, Zal and 5 other Kelvirians sat encased in fully enclosed environmental suits, their translucent bodies barely visible through the thick protective layers designed to shield them from temperature extremes, toxic gases, and radiation. "Approaching the landing zone," announced the pilot, her voice tight with concentration. "Settlement perimeter defenses have acknowledged our approach code." Through the viewport, Zal watched as the shuttle broke through the cloud layer. Below, the human settlement sprawled across a valley, protected on 3 sides by mountain ranges that diverted the worst of the planet's violent weather systems. The settlement itself was a marvel of adaptation. Rather than imposing alien architecture on the landscape, the humans had integrated their structures with the natural terrain. Buildings were partially embedded in the mountainsides, reinforced against the planet's frequent seismic activities. Massive lightning rods towered above the settlement, channeling the electrical storm's energy into what appeared to be storage facilities. "They're harvesting the storms," murmured Science Officer Telra, her voice filled with wonder. "Using the planet's own fury as a power source." The shuttle touched down on a landing pad constructed from local stone, reinforced with metal alloys. As the engines powered down, Zal saw a delegation of humans approaching, led by Commander Santos. Unlike the Kelvirians in their bulky protective suits, the humans wore only light protective gear, reinforced clothing, breathing masks that covered only the lower portion of their faces, and goggles to shield their eyes from the planet's harsh ultraviolet radiation. "Remember," Zal instructed his team, "minimum exposure. Follow decontamination protocols exactly." The shuttle's airlock cycled, and Zal stepped onto the surface of Vorsis 9. Even through his suit, he could feel the planet's heightened gravity tugging at his body. The air outside swirled with particulates that would have scared his respiratory membranes in seconds. "Commander Zal," Santos greeted him, her voice slightly muffled by her breathing mask. "Welcome to Vorsis Settlement." Zal performed the Kelvirian greeting gesture as best he could in his environmental suit. "Commander Santos, we appreciate your hospitality." Santos nodded. "I understand our methods must seem surprising to you. We've had visitors from other species before, though usually they come accidentally, as shipwreck survivors. And these others?" Zal asked. "Did they survive?" "With our help, yes. Though none chose to stay." Santos gestured toward the settlement's main gate. "Shall we?" As they walked, Zal noted the efficiency of the human operation. Every structure served multiple purposes. Water reclamation systems collected the acidic rainfall, filtered it through mineral beds, and redistributed it through the settlement. The external agricultural zones grew specialized plants engineered to thrive in the harsh conditions while detoxifying the soil around them. Most remarkable were the humans themselves. They moved with a casual confidence that seemed entirely at odds with their hostile surroundings. Children, actual children, ran along pathways, their laughter audible even through the protective gear they wore. "How is this possible?" Telra asked, watching as a young human scrambled up a climbing structure made from locally sourced materials. "Your species originated on a Class 3 world. This environment should be lethal to you." Santos led them toward the central operations building. Necessity, adaptation, and stubbornness. The first generation struggled. I won't pretend otherwise. But each generation born here has adapted further. Our scientists have developed treatments that enhance our natural resilience. She paused as they entered the main facility, which was built directly into the mountainside, providing natural insulation and protection. Inside, the air was filtered enough that the humans removed their breathing masks, though Zal and his team remained fully sealed in their environmental suits. But why? Zal asked. Why settle a world that fights you at every turn? Your species had plenty of more hospitable options. Santos gestured toward a large display showing various resource extraction operations around the settlement. Vorsis 9 has the highest concentration of rare earth elements and exotic compounds in this sector. Our initial surveys suggested that beneath its hostile surface lay resources that could advance human technology by centuries. Resource extraction, Krell nodded. That makes sense. An automated mining operation would be the logical approach. We tried that first, Santos said, but Vorsis 9 destroy our automated systems faster than we could replace them. The electromagnetic storms, the seismic activity, the indigenous life forms, they all seem to target anything non-organic. She smiled. So we adapted. Instead of fighting the planet, we learned to live with it, to become part of its ecosystem rather than an invader. Zal was about to respond when an alarm blared through the facility. The humans around them immediately moved to stations, their casual demeanor replaced by practiced efficiency. Perimeter breach, Sector 7, a voice announced over the communication system. Biometric signature identifies a pack of Vorax predators. Santos turned to the Kelvirians. It seems you'll get to see our adaptation in action sooner than I planned. Feel free to observe from the command center, but I must insist you stay inside for your own safety. Before Zal could respond, a tremendous impact shook the facility. Through reinforced observation panels, he saw a massive creature hurling itself against the settlement's outer defenses. The beast was unlike anything in Kelvirian biological records, a six-limbed predator with an exoskeleton that seemed to absorb and redirect energy, its multiple eyes glowing with bioluminescence. Vorax Alpha, Santos identified it. They test our defenses regularly. Watch. To Zal's astonishment, a group of humans moved toward the breach point. They wore more substantial armor now, but still nothing approaching the full environmental protection the Kelvirians required. They carried weapons that seemed designed specifically for the creatures, emitting frequencies that clearly caused the beasts discomfort. But most surprisingly, the humans moved as if they belonged in this environment. Their movements were precise, coordinated, and showed none of the strain that Zal would expect from beings operating in hostile conditions. They're not just surviving here, Science Officer Telra whispered, her voice filled with awe. They're thriving. As the Vorax pack retreated, driven back by the human defenders, Zal felt a fundamental shift in his understanding of the universe. The Kelvirians had always believed that technological advancement was the key to expanding across the stars. Developing better ships, better protective systems, better terraforming. But here were humans, taking a different path altogether. Rather than reshape worlds to suit themselves, they were reshaping themselves to suit the worlds. Santos returned to them, removing her tactical helmet. Sorry about that. The larger predators get more active when the moon Vorsis 2 is in ascendance. They're drawn to our energy signatures. Your people faced them with remarkable casualness, Zal observed. Santos shrugged. You either adapt to Vorsis 9 or you don't survive. We've chosen to adapt. As night fell over the settlement, and Vorsis 9's 3 moons cast an eerie glow through the toxic clouds, Zal stood in the observation dome, watching the violent beauty of this impossible world. Behind him, the data from his team's investigation scrolled across displays, each reading more astonishing than the last. The humans had not just built a settlement on this Deathworld. They had begun to master it. Survival and understanding. Dawn on Vorsis 9 broke with a thunderous cacophony as the day side of the planet heated rapidly, creating violent updrafts that collided with the cooler air of the receding night. From the reinforced guest quarters where the Kelvirian delegation had spent the night, Commander Zal observed sheets of lightning illuminating clouds the color of bruised flesh. Final atmospheric analysis complete, Commander, Science Officer Telra reported, approaching with a data tablet. The human adaptation is even more remarkable than we initially assessed. Zal reviewed the readings. These toxicity levels, And they're breathing this air. With filtration, yes, but the filtration is minimal compared to what we would require. Their genetic modifications are targeting the cellular level, enhancing mitochondrial function, strengthening cell walls against oxidative stress, improving their blood's oxygen-carrying capacity. Natural evolution couldn't achieve this in 27 years, Zoll stated. No, Tellera agreed. But humans have been manipulating their own genetics since before they left their home system. What we're seeing is deliberate adaptation, accelerated and directed. Their conversation was interrupted as Commander Santos entered, accompanied by a human male with distinctive scarring along the left side of his face. Commander Zoll, this is Dr. Eli Chen, our Chief Science Officer and one of the original founders of Vorsis Settlement. The human nodded, studying the Kelvirians with clear interest. Fascinating physiology. Your transparency must provide evolutionary advantages for camouflage on your homeworld. Among other benefits, Zoll replied. Your adaptations to this environment are equally fascinating, Dr. Chen smiled. Necessity breeds innovation. We've had to rewrite portions of our own genetic code to survive here, but the results have been worth it. I've invited you to join us for a special operation today, Santos interjected. We're establishing a new monitoring station in the eastern ridges. It should provide you with a comprehensive view of how we've adapted to Vorsis 9's challenges. Zoll glanced at his team, noting their eagerness despite the obvious risks. We would be honored to observe. 2 hours later, Zoll found himself inside a human transport vehicle moving across terrain that seemed determined to destroy it. The reinforced treads gripped the unstable ground as acid rain pounded against the exterior shell, creating a constant hissing sound as it slowly corroded the protective coating. Through the viewport, Zoll watched humans working outside the vehicle. They moved between protective shelters, installing equipment and taking readings. Their bodies were fully exposed to the environment for minutes at a time, something that would have been fatal for a Kelvirian. Your people move as if the acid rain is merely an inconvenience, Zoll observed. Dr. Chen, seated across from him, nodded. Our skin has been modified to produce enhanced oils that neutralize most of the acids. It stings, but it won't kill us immediately. Extended exposure would still cause damage, but we've learned to work efficiently. The transport lurched as the ground beneath it shifted unexpectedly. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. Seismic activity, the driver announced calmly. Magnitude 5.2 and rising. Santos checked the readings. Abnormal pattern. This isn't a typical tremor. The ground heaved more violently, and through the viewport, Zoll watched in horror as the earth split open less than 50 meters from their position. From the fissure emerged a massive serpentine creature, its segmented body covered in crystalline structures that reflected the lightning flashing overhead. Magma worm, shouted one of the humans. It's headed toward the eastern team. Zoll watched as Santos immediately took command, issuing rapid orders that sent humans scrambling for defensive positions. There was no panic, only coordinated action. What can we do? Zoll asked, instinctively reaching for the weapon at his side, though he knew it would be useless against such a creature. Stay in the transport, Santos ordered. Your environmental suits won't withstand direct combat with a worm. Before Zoll could protest, Santos and Chen had donned specialized gear and exited the vehicle, joining the defensive formation that was rapidly assembling. Through the viewport, Zoll and his team watched as the humans engaged the creature using tactics that spoke of long familiarity with these battles. They didn't attempt to kill the massive beast that would have been impossible with their equipment. Instead, they coordinated to drive it away from their installation, using sonic devices that clearly caused it discomfort and targeted fire at its sensory organs. They're not just surviving the wildlife. Navigation Officer Krell noted with awe. They're communicating with it, in a sense, teaching it boundaries. The battle lasted 23 minutes by Kelvirian Standard Time. When it was over, 2 humans had sustained injuries that would have been fatal to a Kelvirian, yet they walked back to the transport under their own power, already receiving treatment from their companions. As Santos re-entered the transport, she removed her protective helmet, revealing a face streaked with sweat and determination. "Apologies for the interruption," she said, as casually as if they'd experienced a minor delay. "The worms usually stay deeper during this season." "Commander Santos," Zal said, his 4 eyes fixed on her, "I must ask, why are you really here? The resources, while valuable, can't justify this level of risk and adaptation." Santos exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen, who nodded slightly. "Perhaps it's time to show them," Chen suggested. Santos considered for a moment, then nodded. "Change of plans. We're going to Facility 0. The transport changed direction, heading toward a mountain range that their initial scans had shown to be particularly unstable. As they approached, Zal noted a heavily reinforced entrance built directly into the mountainside, guarded by defensive systems far more sophisticated than anything else they'd seen in the settlement. "What is this place?" Zal asked as they disembarked inside a decontamination chamber. "Where it all began," Santos replied. "The reason we came to Vorsis 9 in the first place." Beyond the decontamination chamber lay a facility unlike anything else in the settlement. The technology here was clearly more advanced, the systems more complex. At the center of the main chamber stood a device that pulsed with energy unlike anything in Kelvirian scientific records. 29 years ago, Dr. Chen explained, a human research vessel detected an energy signature emanating from this planet, a signature that matched no known natural phenomenon. He gestured toward the device. "This is what they found. We believe it's approximately 300,000 years old, created by a species that predates all known galactic civilizations." Zal approached the device, his scientific curiosity overwhelming his caution. "What does it do?" "It manipulates fundamental forces," Chen replied. "Gravity, electromagnetic energy, possibly even time itself. We've only begun to understand its principles, but what we've learned has advanced human science by centuries. The resource extraction operation is real," Santos added, "but it's secondary. This is why we stay, why we adapt, why we've changed ourselves rather than abandoning this world." Zal absorbed this information, understanding now the true nature of human presence on Vorsis 9. "You could have removed this device, taken it to a more hospitable world for study." Chen shook his head. "We tried. It's somehow connected to the planet itself. Remove it, and it becomes inert. We had to adapt to it, not the other way around." "And that," Santos continued, "has become the philosophy of human expansion. We don't require perfect conditions. We adapt. We evolve. We transform ourselves to meet the challenge." As Zal studied the ancient device and the humans who had sacrificed so much to understand it, a new perspective on humanity crystallized in his mind. The Kelvirians, like most spacefaring species, expanded by finding worlds that could support them with minimal adaptation, or by transforming worlds to suit their needs. Humans took a different approach. They saw their own bodies and genetics as malleable, adaptable. Where a world resisted terraforming, they simply altered themselves instead. It was a disturbing concept to many Kelvirians, who viewed their physiology as the perfect endpoint of evolution. But standing here on a Class 15 Deathworld, watching humans thrive in conditions that should have been impossible for them, Zal could not deny the effectiveness of their approach. "Your Galactic Council will want to claim jurisdiction over this technology," Santos said, watching Zal carefully. "They'll cite protocols about ancient artifacts and potential weapons technology." "They would," Zal agreed, "if they knew about it." Santos raised an eyebrow. "And will they know about it, Commander?" Zal considered his options. Protocol demanded full disclosure, yet what he had witnessed here went beyond protocol. Humanity was pursuing a different path to the stars, one that the Council might not understand or approve of. "My report will indicate that humans have established a mining colony on Vorsis 9 through a series of remarkable adaptations," Zal said carefully. "I see no reason to speculate on their motivations or to report unsubstantiated rumors about ancient technology. The relief on Santos's face was subtle but unmistakable. "Thank you, Commander." "Don't thank me yet," Zal replied. "Your approach to colonization, changing yourselves rather than your environment, will eventually attract notice. The Council will have questions. By then," Chen said, "we'll be ready to answer them. What we learn here could transform life throughout the galaxy. Environments once thought uninhabitable could support thriving civilizations. Species threatened by changing conditions could adapt rather than perish." As they returned to the main settlement, a violent storm swept across the valley, lightning arcing between the specialized collectors that the humans had constructed. Rather than seeking shelter, many of the humans stood watching the display, their faces turned upward as if in appreciation of the planet's raw power. "There's something else I don't understand," Zal said to Santos as they watched the storm together from the protection of the command center. "Your people seem to enjoy this place. Despite the danger, despite the constant struggle." Santos smiled. "That's the most human thing about us, Commander. We don't just adapt to challenges. We're drawn to them. There's a satisfaction in facing something that should defeat you and finding a way to prevail." The following morning, as the Kelvirian shuttle prepared for departure, Zal stood with Santos at the landing pad. The air was momentarily clear after the night's storm, offering a rare unobstructed view of the rugged landscape. "Your settlement has given me much to think about, Commander Santos," Zal said. "You've chosen a difficult path." "But our own path," Santos replied. "That makes all the difference." As the shuttle lifted off, rising through Vorsis 9's turbulent atmosphere, Zal watched the human settlement recede below. It should not have existed. By all logical assessment, humans should never have attempted to colonize such a world, let alone succeeded. Yet they had done more than succeed. They had embraced this Deathworld, learning its rhythms, adapting themselves to its challenges, making it their own. In the silence of the shuttle, surrounded by the data his team had collected, Zal contemplated what this meant for the future of galactic civilization. Humans were newcomers, their technology still crude by Kelvirian standards, their presence limited to a handful of worlds. But if they could thrive on Vorsis 9, what couldn't they do? If they viewed their own genetics as a tool to be refined, rather than a fixed point of identity, what limits would they recognize? "Update our records," Zal instructed Telra as the shuttle docked with the Horizon Seeker. "Reclassify humans as a Class 1 adaptive species." Telra's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. "Sir, that classification is reserved for species with unlimited colonization potential," Zal finished. "Yes, I'm aware." As the Horizon Seeker prepared to leave the Vorsis system, Zal composed his official report. He chose his words carefully, emphasizing the resourcefulness of the human settlement while omitting certain details about the ancient technology. Some truths, he decided, the galaxy wasn't ready for yet, but they would need to prepare. Humanity was coming, and they wouldn't be confined to gentle worlds. They had made a death world their home, and that changed everything.